So one of the things that came out of the ideation process that was actually facilitated by the Toolbox Initiative for this project was what would success look like for us? And we were involved in this, as were many other ExcelNet fundees. And it was through that process of dialogue, discussion, um, that we realized that in many ways, success for this project, in our view, involved creating a kind of person, training through this process. Uh, Someone, a group of people, presumably early career researchers, graduate students, postdocs, who exhibited certain traits. And the reason why we were thinking this was because ultimately, it's the early career people who are going to do the bulk of the work for the next 30 years. So we better train them up right. And we better train them to work on problems that have been difficult to solve using traditional disciplinary techniques and approaches. So from our point of view, a lot of what we hope to get out of GLASSNet is going to be, I'll just share a brief little word slide. Um, this is, can you see that okay? It should be.
Yep, it's good, Matt.
It should be relatively easy to see being black and white. This is not an exclusive list, but it illustrates some of the traits that we imagine are incorporated in what we would like to think of as the GLASSNet identity. These are some of the traits that we imagine everyone coming through this project will gain experience doing and add this to their own identity. And ideally, so, on the first day we were asked by many people, well, what are the outcomes? What are the deliverables going to be? And there's going to be a host of those, no doubt. But I think one of the main ones is going to be producing people who think a certain way and exhibit a certain number of traits. And this is a brief list of them. But, the first one is that what's clear to us, and I think it's clear to members of the network, is that doing something about the SDGs requires thinking across scales, two-way interactions, not just dynamical downscaling, not just going from the large scale to the fine scale, or not just starting off at the micro level and somehow building up. You have to think both ways. And, obviously, as shown by the breadth of the network of networks we've brought together, they have to think not only interdisciplinarily, but also transdisciplinarily. And they have to be eager to work in teams and not be dragged into it. And not only do they have to want to be able to do it, they have to know how to do that. And that's a lot of what we're doing here, is hoping to develop best practices and infrastructure and knowledge about how to work in transdisciplinary teams across scales. And one of the things that came up and was very clear from the cyber infrastructure or data infrastructure working group was that we also hope to have people who can move between data and models very easily, that cross all of these scale and disciplinary lines, so that we can make predictive statements and do something about meeting SDG challenges. And another aspect that comes in is not having people be locked into one sort of concept of what being a scientist or a researcher means, and not having us focus on one narrow part of the problem and leave all the other parts of the problem, from justice and diversity and inclusivity, or training and education, or reaching out to the private sector and integrating business perspectives or NGOs. Let's not leave any of that as some sort of add-on. Let's imagine, as part of a GLASSNet person's core identity, that they think from the very beginning about integrating all sorts of expertise and all sorts of resources that can be brought to bear on a problem from the outset, and that it isn't an add-on and it isn't an unnatural thing. So there may, be more that we can add to this, but I think that we can define success in many ways by looking at people who come out of this and they've moved closer to this core identity.